The suitcases sat waiting by the door, just as I had for years. 15 years of doing everything right. A steady career. Anniversary dinners with flowers and wine. Patience, so much patience, I lost my own voice. And then tonight she walked in, red wine on her breath, expensive perfume trailing behind, phone glued to her hand. She smiled. She didn't even look at me. She said I got the attention I wanted. I understood. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was background noise, the foundation she assumed would never move. She didn't notice the bags. Or maybe she did and didn't care. But I had already booked a room, not at Bellini's, at a small apartment, quiet enough to finally hear myself again. After more than a decade of shrinking so I wouldn't disturb, I chose to leave. Have you ever felt yourself slowly disappearing inside your own life? If you have, keep watching. You might see yourself in this story. The morning after that silent midnight, I sat in a conference room where chaos had broken loose. A system crash, deadlines, collapsing, millions on the line. My team looked to me, and like always, I steadied the storm. We traced the failure, patched the code, salvaged the account. Applause followed. My boss slapped my shoulder. "You always save the day, Michael." I smiled, polite as ever, but my eyes fell to the old watch on my wrist. A gift from my father when I first made manager. It ticked steadily, almost mocking. I can fix databases, I can fix teams, I can even fix deadlines with nothing but coffee and grit. But as I left that room, a bitter truth gnawed at me. I can fix systems, not my marriage. And so I planned the night that was supposed to remind us who we once were. I booked the best table at a Dallas steakhouse, the one overlooking the skyline. Barolo uncorked, breathing quietly like a promise. On the table waited calla lilies, her favorite, and in my pocket, a small velvet box with earrings that caught the light like hope. It was our 15th anniversary. 15 years of late nights, family bills, PTA meetings, and sacrifices. Tonight would not be about work or missed calls. Tonight would be about us. I arrived early, checked the setting, twice even adjusted the candles. The waiter smiled. "Big night, huh?" I nodded. He didn't know I was carrying 15 years on my shoulders. This dinner would be different, I told myself. Tonight, I'd make her remember. But hope is fragile. And at 7:15, when the table was ready, all I held was silence. 20 minutes passed. I texted her, "Table ready whenever you are." Another 30 slid by. At 7:45, the steak cooled under silver domes. The waiter kept refilling my water with pity in his eyes. Finally, my phone lit up. My chest loosened, maybe an apology. Maybe she was rushing over. I answered quickly. It wasn't sorry. It was Marcus. Strategy meetings. Presentation ran long. Casual, like it was nothing. I clenched the velvet box in my pocket. Around me, couples laughed. Forks scraped plates. Glasses clinked in celebration. Across the room, a man kissed his wife's hand as dessert arrived. And me, I sat alone at a table set for two. By the time she finally walked in, almost an hour late, the candles had burned low, and something inside me had burned lower still. When she finally arrived nearly an hour late, she didn't even look up. Her phone was glued to her ear. She mouthed a quick sorry to me, then kept talking her laugh. Too polished, too rehearsed. I raised my glass anyway, my voice steady. "Happy anniversary." She froze, eyes flicking from the screen to the velvet box I slid across the table. The confusion in her smile told me the truth. Before her lips did, she'd forgotten. Completely. 15 years wiped clean like chalk off a board. She opened the earrings, gasped politely, kissed my cheek, and immediately checked another vibration on her phone. The waiter placed our tiramisu between us. It was meant to be shared. Instead, it melted slowly into a pool of cream and coffee, untouched, like everything else we used to share. And as I watched it collapse, I realized something else had collapsed too. That night, the house was silent, except for the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. She stayed up typing blue light, washing her face while I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I reached for the small leather journal I'd bought weeks earlier. Its cover was stiff, untouched. Tonight, I needed it. On the first page in ink that cut deeper than I expected, I wrote "invisible in my own marriage." The words looked dramatic, but they also looked true. As the clock chimed one, the sound echoed through the house like it had for 15 years. Only this time, each strike felt like it was marking something I couldn't ignore anymore. Naming the pain hurt less than denying it. And once you put the truth on paper, you can't unsee it. The next entry came sooner than I thought. Two weeks later, at an industry mixer downtown, I shook hands with Robert, the husband of Kelly's colleague. Harmless small talk at first, until he leaned closer, lowering his voice. Heard you two argued about the bedroom remodel. Whole office was buzzing. My smile froze. That argument had happened in our home behind a closed door. Roof repairs versus decor updates, nothing anyone else should know. Robert chuckled, oblivious. Melissa said, Kelly joked, you've got charming but outdated priorities. His words landed like ice water. My private disagreements were office entertainment. I nodded, played along, pretended I wasn't bleeding inside. But when I walked away, the knot in my stomach told me the truth. This wasn't just forgetfulness anymore. This was disrespect made public, and it wouldn't stop there. The mixer wasn't mine to attend, it was hers. Kelly thrived in that room, circling executives like she owned the air. Then she pulled me forward, her hand barely touching my arm. This is Michael. Just a project manager. The words cut sharper than they sounded. Laughter bubbled politely around me, the kind of laugh people use when they know who holds the real power. I smiled, professional mask in place, but inside something cracked. Reliable. Keeps things running smoothly. She said it like I was an appliance, a washing machine that never breaks down. I raised my glass, let the whiskey burn slow, and kept quiet. That's what reliable men do. We endure. But across the room, I caught Mark's eyes. He'd heard it. He'd seen it. Later, under the Texas night sky, he'd put into words what I still couldn't. We slipped out to the hotel terrace, city lights stretching across Dallas like veins of fire. The air was cooler out here, cleaner. Mark leaned on the railing, shaking his head. That wasn't work persona, Michael. That was disrespect. The word landed heavy. Disrespect. A word I'd avoided, softened, excused, but hearing it said aloud by another man, it cracked something wide open. I sipped the last of my drink, letting the silence sit between us. My chest felt lighter, but also raw, exposed. Mark's voice was steady. You've been carrying this alone too long. It's not stress. It's a pattern. For the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't defend her. I just nodded because deep down, I knew he was right. But admitting it to myself was one thing. Confronting her, that would be another war entirely. And I was about to start it. I chose Tuesday night. No late meetings, no excuses. Just us face to face at the kitchen table where families are supposed to talk. She sat across from me, tablet in hand, scrolling emails while I gathered my words. Kelly, I need to talk about us, about the patterns. Her eyes flicked up, annoyed. What patterns? I laid them out. Missed dinners, the phone always more important, the way she talked about me in front of others. The anniversary she forgot. Her lips tightened. Then came the sigh, the roll of her eyes. You're being too sensitive. You're insecure about my success. The sentence hit harder than a slap. She didn't deny it. She didn't care. She shifted the blame onto me. And in that moment, I understood I wasn't fighting for clarity. I was fighting for my dignity. And the fight was only beginning. I was still at the table laying out months of silence, missed anniversaries, the way she cut me down in public. For once, I thought I had her attention. Then, ping! Her phone lit up. She didn't even try to hide it. Just one quick glance, like muscle memory. I stopped mid-sentence, waited. She tapped the screen. Not a crisis, not Marcus, not even work. Just an email notification. Junk. And yet, in that moment, I understood this is what not being heard feels like. When the device in her hand held more weight than the man across from her, I swallowed the rest of my words. She set the phone down, looked back at me with that impatient face. Go on. But the damage was already done. Something in me closed like a door I wasn't sure I'd ever open again. That night, lying awake, I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding. What do I actually need? Not the surface answers, the real ones. I needed emotional safety, the certainty that home wasn't another battlefield. I needed respect, basic acknowledgement that my life mattered as much as hers. I needed connection, not text, not crumbs of attention, but presence. And I realized one by one I had none of those. Not anymore. Support isn't self-erasure. Being a partner doesn't mean being invisible. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows blurred. For years, I had told myself this was just stress, just a phase. But when you strip away the excuses, only truth remains. And truth is merciless. The next test of that truth came in public under string lights and beer bottles at a neighborhood barbecue. Neighbors gathered in the backyard, beers sweating in the Texas heat, kids running circles around the grill. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Small talk, sports scores, property taxes. It felt normal. Then Kelly arrived, wine glass in hand, voice pitched just a little louder than everyone else's. She laughed, turned to the group, and said, "You should have seen Michael's face when I mentioned growth targets, complete deer in headlights. He's happy just coasting in his safe little role." Laughter rippled uneasy. Eyes darted between us. A couple of neighbors shifted uncomfortably. My jaw tightened, my chest burned. I didn't explode. Instead, I set my beer down, walked calmly into the kitchen for another. Because if I stayed out there, I'd say something I could never take back. But the truth was clear. She wasn't just dismissing me in private anymore. She was dismantling me in front of everyone. The drive home was a graveyard of words unsaid. She scrolled through her emails, her face lit by the blue glow of her phone, while I kept my eyes on the dark stretch of highway. Out of habit, I glanced at our shared calendar notification on the dashboard. Something was missing. I tapped it open. The Napa trip, our anniversary weekend, gone. In its place, Chicago National Marketing Executive Summit. No conversation, no discussion, just erased. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Headlights from passing cars streaked across the windshield like knives. She didn't notice. She never did. I drove in silence, but inside my chest, the noise was deafening. That calendar wasn't a mistake. It was a message, and when I reached home, I needed to know how deep the message ran. Back at the house, I went straight to the travel folder. The Napa reservations were still there, flights booked, hotel paid, untouched. Then I searched her email. Buried among confirmations and client notes there, it was Chicago. Booked 3 weeks ago, flights, hotel, full itinerary. She'd planned it all while still smiling at me across the kitchen, pretending Napa was real. I sank into the chair, the papers trembling in my hand. This wasn't miscommunication. This was deception. 15 years of marriage reduced to secret plans and erased promises. I stared at the confirmation email until the text blurred the edges, bleeding into each other. My chest felt hollow, like something had been scooped out and left empty. And yet, in that emptiness, clarity began to form. Because lies don't just destroy trust, they force you to decide what you'll tolerate. I stepped out into the backyard. The Dallas night stretched wide above me. The stars were faint against city lights, but steady like they'd always been. I sat on the cold bench where I used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings, and my father's voice echoed in memory. Don't make someone a priority if they've made you an option. The words landed differently tonight. Not advice, not philosophy. A command. I inhaled deeply, the night air sharp in my lungs. My hands stopped shaking. For months, I'd excused, explained, rationalized. But under that sky, there was no more hiding. I made a decision, quiet and absolute. The line had to be drawn. Not tomorrow, not someday. Tonight. Because dignity isn't something you negotiate. And once you decide to defend it, there's no going back. The following week, I sat across from Dr. Levine in a quiet office, lined with bookshelves and muted lamps. I laid it all out, the missed anniversaries, the dismissive laughs, the lies. Her expression never flinched. When I finished, she folded her hands and said simply, "This isn't stress. This is a respect issue." 3 words, clean as a scalpel. She outlined 3 steps. First, keep documenting the patterns. I already had my journal. Second, seek professional clarity on the practical side. Third, set boundaries. Not to control her, but to define what I would no longer allow. As she spoke, I realized therapy wasn't giving me answers. It was giving me permission to act on the answers I already knew. I left her office lighter than I'd entered. Not happy, not healed, just clear. And clarity, I discovered, is more dangerous than anger. My next stop wasn't a bar, wasn't a church. It was a financial advisor's office. Alan Winters sat across from me, pen tapping as I laid out the numbers. Joint accounts, bills, savings. My savings built carefully over years. Her spending fast and loud. He didn't lecture. He advised. Separate your income. Back up every record. Build a budget based only on what's yours. At first, it felt disloyal, but then the truth clicked into place. Protecting myself wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Alan looked me in the eye. Protecting yourself isn't punitive. It's prudent. Those words hit me harder than any financial chart. I left with folders under my arm and a plan in my head, not just to leave not yet, but to prepare. Because preparation isn't about leaving someone, it's about not leaving yourself defenseless. And for the first time, I felt the ground beneath me steady. With clarity came action. I drove 15 minutes from my office to a quiet complex. The manager led me up to a one-bedroom unit. I opened the blinds. Morning light spilled across hardwood floors. A small balcony looked down onto a courtyard garden. For the first time in years, I imagined a space that was mine. Books lining shelves without being called clutter, my father's leather chair by the window, the watch ticking quietly on the table beside it. No sterile decor, no performance, just me. The manager smiled. "Would you like an application?" I felt the weight of the pen in my hand heavier than any contract I'd signed at work. I wrote my name, my signature, and as the ink dried, one thought echoed in my mind. I applied. The first step into a life that wasn't shared yet somehow felt more whole. After signing the lease, I turned my focus to evidence, not for revenge, but for sanity. I opened my journal, lined up every entry by date, cross-checked them against emails, calendar invites, receipts. Each page was a nail in the coffin of my denial. I took photos of the shared calendar of the Chicago confirmation, printed out copies, backed them up twice. Then I drafted a letter, not a goodbye, not yet. A temporary separation notice written in calm, measured words. No blame, just facts. A clear boundary set in ink. When I put the pen down, something unexpected washed over me. Not guilt, not fear, but calm. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control of my own story. And calm is a dangerous thing, because it means you're ready. I bought 2 new suitcases, high-quality ones. Not cheap, not flashy, durable. Like the man I'd had to become. I packed her things with the same care I once brought to saving projects at work. Essentials only: her favorite clothes, her daily jewelry, the framed photo of her parents, the blanket she curled under on cold nights. Folded neatly, respectfully. This wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Each item I packed, I whispered silently to myself. Boundaries can be gentle and firm at the same time. By the time I zipped the last suitcase, the living room felt different, lighter. Like the air itself had shifted, the bags stood by the door, silent witnesses to a marriage at its breaking point. And as I looked at them, I realized dignity doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just packs quietly. The final step was small, but it carried the weight of 15 years. I placed the letter on the dresser in our bedroom. My handwriting steady, unemotional. My new address, financial details, a request for space. Nothing more, nothing less. On top of it, I set my house key. One symbol of trust exchanged for another, a boundary. By the front door, my overnight bag waited, packed with only what I needed to survive the first few nights in my new place. The suitcases for her stood beside it, lined like soldiers, awaiting command. Then I sat in the quiet living room, the grandfather clock ticking loud each second, stretching like rope pulled too tight. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I was waiting for the sound of tires on gravel, the rattle of keys in the lock, the moment everything would change. The clock struck 12 as the headlights swept across the wall. The door clicked, and Kelly stumbled in, wine on her breath, perfume sharp enough to sting. She dropped her keys on the table like a queen returning from conquest. Her lips curved in that hollow smile. I got the attention I wanted. I didn't shout. I didn't break. I simply lifted my eyes toward the 2 suitcases standing sentinel by the door. "Your bags are ready." Her smirk faltered, confusion flashing, then indignation. Because of one night, I stood steady. No, because of a pattern. Not a night. Her jaw tightened, her voice slipping between anger, mockery, and pleading like she couldn't decide which weapon still worked. But the truth was, none of them did. And in that silence, the balance of power shifted not with noise, but with finality. I walked out with a single overnight bag. Behind me, her voice ricocheted through the hallway, sharp, then soft, then sharp again. My phone buzzed in my pocket like a hornet's nest, but I didn't answer. The streets of Dallas bled into the highway. I-35 stretched ahead, empty under sodium lights. Each mile put distance between me and 15 years of erosion. At the new apartment, I unlocked the door. The space smelled of fresh paint, faintly chemical but honest. No perfume, no lies. I dropped the bag, set my watch on the nightstand, and lay down on the bare mattress. For the first time in months, I slept without rehearsing tomorrow's argument. No dreams, no noise, just quiet. It wasn't joy, it wasn't victory, it was peace. And peace, I realized, was enough for tonight. Morning light cut through the blinds. My phone glowed 17 missed calls, 23 messages. I scrolled. The pattern was predictable, almost scripted. First rage. You'll regret this. Then bargaining. We can fix it if you come home. Then guilt. After everything I sacrificed for us. Finally, desperation. I need you. Please. It was a carousel of manipulation spinning faster than ever. For years, I would have caved, apologized, soothed her back into calm. But this time, I typed 3 words, I need space. Hit send. I stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar ache of guilt to follow. It never came. Instead, there was only stillness like a storm had passed and left the air shockingly clear. And in that silence, I knew the hardest chains to break were never on my wrists. They'd been in my chest. Now they were gone. By the second morning, my phone lit up not with Kelly's chaos, but with Mark's name. Michael, you okay? His voice was steady. No judgment, just concern. I told him the truth. The erased anniversary, the Chicago deception, the suitcases waiting at midnight. For a moment, there was silence. Then he said 6 words that hit deeper than all the messages from Kelly combined. You did the right thing. Man, my chest loosened like someone had lifted a weight I didn't know I was still carrying. It wasn't about needing permission. It was about being seen. Validation from someone who wasn't tangled in the storm. And in that moment, I realized how starved I'd been for a simple truth spoken out loud, the kind that makes you breathe again. The apartment began to take shape. I built the bookshelves, lined them with the volumes Kelly had banished to boxes in the garage. I brewed coffee in a cheap drip pot, carried the mug to the balcony, and watched the courtyard garden stir awake in the Texas morning. No interruptions, no buzzing phone cutting me off mid-sentence, just steam rising from black coffee in my hands. That night, I opened my journal and wrote 4 simple words. Peace is greater than noise. I read them back twice slowly as if testing whether they were real. They were. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing calm. I was living it. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. And peace, when you've been drowning in disrespect, is the rarest currency of all. The calm didn't last long. By Friday, Kelly's number flashed on my screen. I answered out of habit. Her voice was sharp, urgent. I'm at Nordstrom. My cards declined. Give me the joint account password now. I took a breath. Kelly, I moved my direct deposit. The joint account still covers mortgage and utilities. Nothing else. You can't just do that. That's our money. No, I said evenly. That was my contribution. Yours is still there. What I won't do anymore is fund disrespect. The line went silent, then exploded with her fury. But her anger no longer landed where it used to. Boundaries weren't meant to punish. They were meant to protect. And hearing myself say it aloud, I knew this wasn't about money. It was about finally refusing to bankroll my own erasure. The message came from Jennifer Heads Up. Kelly's gathering the girls at Castillo's tonight. I could picture it clearly, wine glasses clinking Kelly, spinning her version of events, painting herself as the wronged executive wife abandoned by her insecure husband. The old me would have scrambled, tried to correct the record, explain my side manage appearances. This time I didn't. When mutual friends reached out fishing for details, I answered the same way every time we're taking space. I'd rather not discuss details out of respect for privacy. No campaign, no counterattack, just a quiet refusal to wrestle in the mud. Choosing silence wasn't weakness. It was discipline. Because sometimes the strongest response isn't defending your story. It's knowing the truth doesn't need an audience to remain true. A week later, my phone buzzed at work. Security at the front desk. Your wife is here. She says it's urgent. I stepped into the lobby, and there she was, Kelly in her power suit, polished and perfect, her performance already in motion. "Michael, can we talk?" Her voice had the right balance of vulnerability and command tuned for any passerby. "Not here," I said. We crossed the street to a coffee shop, sat by the window. She leaned in, hands poised, eyes searching for cracks in my armor. "You've made your point. Let's work on this." I stirred my coffee slowly, then met her gaze. "I need clarity before there can be any talk of working on it." Her smile stiffened. The performance script wasn't landing, and for the first time she looked unsure. She switched tactics fast. Eyes glistening, voice trembling, she whispered, "I miss you." She slid a hand across the table, rehearsed vulnerability dripping from every syllable. "I canceled 2 business trips already. Doesn't that show you I'm trying?" I let her hand hover in the space between us, then pulled mine back to my lap. "This isn't about tallying trips canceled, Kelly. This isn't scorekeeping. It's about the foundation, and ours is cracked." Her tears froze mid-performance, replaced with a flash of frustration. The applause she was waiting for never came. I wasn't moved by the act anymore, because once you've seen the pattern, you can't unsee it. And her hand, suspended in midair, became the perfect symbol of our marriage reaching, but never connecting. It was supposed to be an ordinary lunch with a potential client. White tablecloth, polite small talk, business cards exchanged. Then I heard a familiar voice, Melissa, wife of Kelly's colleague. She smiled, then hesitated. "Michael, I probably shouldn't say this, but 3 years ago, when you were up for that global systems role, Kelly told everyone you refused because you wouldn't relocate." The fork froze in my hand. My chest tightened. "I never refused," I said, voice flat. Melissa lowered her eyes. "She told Marcus you weren't the kind to take risks. That's why they didn't push for you." The realization cut deeper than any insult. This wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just disrespect. She had sabotaged me quietly, deliberately, while smiling across our dinner table. And in that moment, the story of our marriage rewrote itself in sharper ink. I finished lunch, closed the deal, shook hands as if nothing had cracked inside me. Years of composure at work had trained me well, but that night alone in the apartment, I opened my journal, flipped through every entry, missed anniversaries, dismissive laughs, public humiliations, erased trips. And now, sabotage. It all lined up like dominoes, each piece tipping into the next. Not random, not stress, a pattern. For months, I had wrestled with the idea of closure, imagining some final conversation where she admitted the truth. But staring at my own handwriting, I realized something closure doesn't need confession. It doesn't even need her. Truth was enough. And once truth settled into place, it gave me something better than an apology ever could: freedom from needing one. The next morning, I filed the paperwork. Legal separation, clean, clinical, no theatrics. From that point on, communication was reduced to logistics, mortgage utilities, necessary signatures. Nothing more. Some mutual friends drifted toward her, absorbing her version of events. Others stayed neutral. A few quietly stayed in my corner. I didn't chase anyone. The circle was shrinking, but it was sharpening too. And oddly, it felt right. When storms hit, the branches that break off reveal which roots actually hold. By the time I walked out of the courthouse, I felt lighter. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just steady. Life wasn't bigger yet, but it was clearer, and clarity was worth more than the biggest crowd. The apartment no longer felt temporary. I carried my father's leather chair to the corner by the window where the morning light hit just right. The same chair she once called too bulky, now standing like a throne reclaimed. Books stacked on shelves, spines out, unapologetic. No longer hidden in boxes labeled clutter. Soft jazz drifted from a small speaker, filling the room with something I hadn't felt in years belonging. I turned the key in the lock that evening, stepped inside, and for the first time in a long time, the air didn't feel hostile. I recognized my own home when I opened the door. It wasn't grand, it wasn't expensive, but it was mine. And sometimes the smallest space feels larger than any house when it finally mirrors the man who lives inside. At the office, something shifted too. I took on a project in emerging technologies, a lateral move Kelly once mocked as career suicide. But the work sparked something I thought I'd lost. I mentored junior staff, saw their eyes light up when a tough concept finally clicked. Their energy fed mine, and suddenly work wasn't just about deadlines. It was about purpose. For years, I'd been steady, reliable, the one who keeps the lights on. Now I was choosing paths not for prestige, not for optics, but because they fit me, and that felt like success on my own terms. As I walked out one evening, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I didn't see the man who tolerated being minimized. I saw someone rebuilding. And rebuilders don't stop halfway. Community has a way of finding you when you least expect it. One evening, neighbors across the hall invited me to a small rooftop gathering. No corporate suits, no posturing, just laughter, wine, and mismatched chairs under the Texas sky. That's where I met Eleanor, a retired literature professor recently widowed. Sharp wit, quick smile. She asked what I read, not what I earned. We swapped book titles as the sun slipped into orange and purple. She listened, not the polite nodding kind, but the kind that absorbs. For the first time in years, I felt what it was like to speak without competing with a glowing phone screen. When the night ended, she handed me a worn copy of Steinbeck with her notes in the margins. I walked back to my apartment lighter, realizing connection doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up as a quiet rooftop conversation and the feeling of being heard. The message arrived late, almost casually. Starting a new role in Chicago. Fresh start. I stared at the words, then typed back, fresh start. Simple. Final. A moment later, another bubble appeared. That's it. After 15 years, my thumbs hovered. I thought of anniversaries, forgotten dinners, where my words dissolved into her phone screen. Opportunities sabotaged respect, traded for attention. And yet, I felt no anger, just a quiet truth. I typed, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Kelly." Her reply came fast. "You too, Michael." It wasn't closure, not fully. But maybe closure doesn't come in a single message. Maybe it comes in the silence that follows the space where you no longer need another word to feel complete. The sky broke into orange and violet as dawn spilled over Dallas. I stood on my small balcony, steam rising from a chipped mug of coffee, the glass door fogged from the warmth inside. The city below stirred awake, but up here it was just me, the sunrise, and the quiet hum of belonging. I opened my journal one last time. On a clean page I wrote, "Peace came from alignment, not approval. No signatures needed, no validation required, just alignment between values, choices, and the man I'd finally decided to be." I closed the journal, rested it beside my father's watch on the table, and let the morning light wash over me. For the first time in 15 years, I smiled without needing anyone to notice. Peace wasn't something I found. It was something I stopped giving away. 15 years taught me this safety isn't enough when respect is gone. You can have a roof, a bank account, even a partner, but if your dignity erodes day by day, you're not living. You're surviving. Boundaries aren't about control. They're not punishment. They're the line where self-respect starts. And sometimes that line isn't drawn with shouting. It's drawn with quiet courage. 2 packed suitcases by the door, a key on the dresser, and a man who finally chooses to walk away. Because respect isn't a luxury, it's the foundation. Without it, love rots. With it, even solitude feels like peace. So I'll leave you with this. What would you pack if it meant reclaiming yourself? If you've ever felt the weight of being unseen, you know the answer already. Comment, respect, if this hits home. Share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe because this story isn't just mine. It might be yours too.